Hello and welcome back to SpaceX In the News podcast, where today I'm joined again by Everything SpaceX, or Arthur as you may know him. Um, Hello.
Hi, how are you doing today?
Yeah, back for our third episode of the podcast now. It's been a little while since we did the last one. Both of us have been really busy, so there's a lot to talk about today. A lot of news, some as recent as last night, some about launches we're expecting to happen later today. There's a lot to talk about, so should we get started straight away?
Let's get into it. There's
I'll let.
plenty of topics, especially over the last month. So I think we'll start with the Venus announcement last
Yeah,
night. So there was a state of address by the new NASA administrator, Senator Bill Nelson, and he announced two new missions to Venus, which should look at the planet's atmosphere and geological features. Um, in total, they've been awarded around $500 million in funding, and they're currently expected to launch between 2028 and 2030. So,
yeah.
it's a while off, but it's definitely something very exciting and to look forward to amongst all the other planetary missions, discovery missions that are coming up.
Yeah, in terms of interplanetary missions, that's the sort of timeline we would have expected for building the probes and preparing for launch anyway. Um, yeah, I'll let you carry on.
And in fact, the last US probe to visit Venus was actually the Magellan orbiter back in 1990. So it's been around 30 years since
Yeah,
NASA been to Venus. So it was well overdue, especially after the recent announcements, possibly discovering phosphine or signs of phosphine in Venus's atmosphere. So
yeah,
um, it is time to go back. And of
yeah.
course, this isn't the only like Venus mission heading over there to our one of our nearest planets.
No, it sure
RocketLab are
isn't.
also sending a mission to Venus in currently expected to be 2023. And interest in this planet is definitely increasing. So the two missions are actually sent to Venus. So one is called the Da Vinci Plus. This stands for the Deep Atmosphere Venus Investigation of Noble Gases, Chemistry and Imaging, and it will measure the planet's atmosphere to find out how it was formed, as well as how it was evolved, and hopes to work out whether Venus ever had an ocean. And obviously, this would be groundbreaking. So, this mission is something extremely exciting, and
Yeah,
we should hopefully see the first high resolution images of Venus's geological features, which once again is something very much to look forward to. And
yeah.
then
There'll be new things
the
which
other
we haven't
thing
seen
that
before, which would be cool.
absolutely, and then the other thing that will be going to Venus, an orbiter called Veritas, the Venus Emissivity Radio Science, INSAR Topography and Spectroscopy. It's quite hard to say that, I
Not
can't
not
lie.
too many hard words then.
Yeah, not at all. And that is going to actually map the planet's surface and understand the geological history of Venus. Um, and hopefully it will discover whether volcanoes and earthquakes are still um, are still sort of active um, at Venus,
Yeah,
um, which will be extremely interesting if they are, and even if they were just if they're which we expect there to be in the past as well, we can sort of investigate that as well. So the Venus use it's definitely something many planetary scientists are extremely happy about.
mm.
Um, so yeah, and because there's not only now government missions going there or only private missions, it's both. So there's going to be plenty of discoveries hopefully over the next decade
Yeah,
um, uh, to do with Venus. And then, if you look forward to the future of this planet, that is, well, the hottest planet in our solar system.
yeah,
Uh, um, uh, so, 500 degrees Celsius at the surface, but around the atmosphere, could it be habitable? Um, could humans somehow adapt to the clouds of Venus, something like that? it's definitely an extremely interesting proposal and something that maybe will be thought about in the decades to come.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to think about there. It's an expensive mission, but these interplanetary missions, that's quite 500 million for an interplanetary mission to a planet which we've never been to before. That's not that bad, really, to be honest. I'd have to say.
And yeah, so I don't know if the funding will increase as it goes along.
Mm,
I imagine it'll increase slightly. I imagine there might
kind
be
of,
new
yeah,
funding rounds,
like
but I
a
think the
cost
initial
plus
funding,
type
yeah,
contract. Yeah,
but I believe the initial funding um, is at least 352 million, and that will be to finish the design, actually make the probe, and then there'll be launch services that will have to include at a later date. So yeah, I'd
yeah.
imagine it will increase a fair bit, but still, for something as sort of hopefully groundbreaking as this, it'll be
Yeah.
very much worth it.
Yeah, I can imagine in the coming weeks and months we'll start to see some more information coming out on that, with some more specific details on it. This was only announced last night, so both of us have only just heard about this. So there's a lot of information coming through quite soon. So maybe I might put a video on it soon, but at the moment it's still like initial days. But we expect to probably hear more soon, especially with it being such an important interplanetary mission. We'd expect to hear a lot of details to get everyone excited about it. Not that we already aren't excited about it, to be honest. I think should we move on to some crew assignments for commercial crew
Yeah,
with SpaceX?
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, shall I? I'll start with Crew 3. So the Crew 3 mission, which is
Yeah,
the next mission, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is October this year, is the current net
yeah.
time, I believe. Yeah.
It's currently it's currently set for next October, the 23rd.
Yeah, so kind of same time we saw was it Crew One, same time, roughly time of year we saw Crew One. So we should see
Yeah,
in
it's
the
about a few
future
weeks
of the
off.
yeah in the future of like commercial crew, we should see twice a year flights with the previous crew splashing down and rotational flights. So the important thing about Crew Three, which is very cool to mention, is that we've seen all four astronauts have been assigned now. Three of them, including the commander, this is their first ever spaceflight, which is an interesting. That'll probably be the first time since the shuttle, which I can imagine we had three astronauts on a first space fight for that
Yeah, most
mission.
likely. Yeah,
Yeah, so that's I can only think of another vehicle which had seven astronauts. Chances are a few of them were likely for that to be their first ever space flight. Do you want to talk through who's been assigned to it? Because I'm not sure on the pronunciation of some of their names.
or
Uh,
Crew 4.
yep. Should we stick to
So
crew three first, then move on to four? So,
yeah, so
who's been assigned to crew three?
so so originally that was selected. It was Raja Chair,
Yeah.
Raja Chawi. I can't
we haven't
exactly
we haven't
pronounce
really
it,
heard
unfortunately.
NASA pronounce their names yet, so it's hard to tell. We're literally just
Um,
reading it off a line, but we'll see.
yeah, so it's not the easiest.
No,
But Raj Chai, he was selected as part of the 2017 astronaut class, and he's going to be the commander of
and it's his first space flight,
Crew 3.
which
Yeah,
is very interesting.
and then the pilot is Thomas Marshburn,
Um,
and this is his third space flight.
Yep, so he's the most experienced
Um,
member of the crew with three space flights. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I believe at least one of them was on shuttle, maybe both of them. I can't remember. But yeah, he's an experienced astronaut, and he's going to be the pilot of the mission, which is very interesting.
yeah, and then Matthias Morer,
Who, who's your Easter
he's a
astronaut? Yep.
he's a German astronaut, and this will be his first space flight after joining the ESA astronaut corps in
Yep.
July 2015.
Yeah. Right, so we're going to get back into it. We had to stop for a few seconds to do swim, but I believe we have got to the fourth astronaut on the Crew 3 mission.
Yeah.
So if you would like to carry on with that, go ahead.
So Caleb Bowen has been picked as the fourth astronaut for Crew 3. She'll be the second mission specialist on this mission,
Yeah.
and this is also her first space flight. And yeah, so she like Rajachari, I think that's how you say it. Sorry,
Yeah.
once again, that's slightly incorrect. Um, she was also picked in the 2017 astronaut class.
Yeah, so
And
quite
then
recent.
yeah, and then also this week we've also had an Axiom space announcement, and they basically running private space flights
Yeah.
to orbit, to ISS, and so on. And this week they announced we already knew that Axiom One, which is four crew members already been announced, which is launching no earlier than January 2022, would fly on a Crew Dragon
Yeah.
spacecraft to the ISS for around a week. Um, But this week, they also announced complete through Axiom 1 all the way to Axiom 4. They
Yeah.
will all fly on SpaceX's Crew Dragon spacecraft.
Yeah, Crew Dragon is starting to become very popular, should we say, along the commercial and the national flights, should we say. So that's pretty cool. We're getting a lot of launch cadence coming up soon with Crew Dragon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these missions will go from 2022 all the way to 2023.
Yeah.
So if we currently look at all the Crew Dragon missions that are upcoming, we've got the Inspiration 4 mission
Yeah.
launching no later than September 15th of this
Yeah.
year. You know,
And on
Jared
the
Isaacman,
yeah, go on. Sorry.
Haley Arsenault, Sean Proctor, Chris Zembrowski. Incredibly exciting.
Yeah. Quickly on the topic of
all civilian
Inspiration
spacecraft.
4, yesterday we got to see pictures of them lot training in the Dragon simulator,
Yeah,
all
that
space
was really
suited
cool.
up, which is really cool. Just a little side point on that.
Yeah, that was definitely interesting.
Yeah. So,
And then as well as that, we've got so Inspiration 4, we've got Crew 3 launching. We got the Axiom 1 as mentioned earlier next year, Crew 4 next year, Crew
yeah.
5, Crew 6.
And then that is as
well
far
as
as the contract takes us at the moment in terms of NASA launches.
Yeah.
On Crew 4, quickly, I wanted to mention something. So you might have noticed with Crew 3, we've got 3 NASA astronauts and 1 ESA astronaut. With Crew 1, we had 3 NASA astronauts and 1 JAXA astronaut. So I'd like to kind of speculate that Crew 4, we may see another JAXA astronaut fly. Or I think...
Sure.
Yeah, because we've got 3 crew members, or it's 2 or 3 crew members have already been announced for Crew 4. So that 4th seat will probably go to either an ESA or a JAXA.
Yeah. So for the Crew Dragon missions, I also forgot to mention there's also going to be a Space Adventures flight at some point, and obviously Axiom 2 to 4. But also with the astronaut assignments, about a week ago for Crew 4, we already knew that Lindgren and Robert Hines, national astronauts, will be flying in Crew 4 sometime in spring next year. They also just announced that Samantha Cristoforetti will be launching on this flight as well.
Who is an Italian ESA astronaut, isn't she?
Yeah. And she'll become ISIS commander. So
right.
There'll also be one more spot picked at a later date.
It's quite interesting what could happen with that 4th seat. I remember there was some talks about some Russian astronauts flying on there, but at the same time there was quite a lot of controversy we saw coming about that. So I think there was one quote from a Russian ambassador saying, "We've got our own ships. Why do we need to fly on them?"
I'd say that slightly hostile towards
I'd say it was slightly on the back burner. The Russian astronauts fly on Crew Dragon, which is, I suppose, in some way, I'll give them credit for it because they have got their own Soyuz spacecraft. I think NASA was using Soyuz because we didn't have another option, but I think it kind of makes sense for them to say, well, we've got Soyuz, you know. But it would be a cool little exchange to see, similar to like Apollo Soyuz in the past, you know. It reminds me of, but I think that might be one for a little bit further in the future, and we'll see what happens really. So I wouldn't expect that 4th seat on Crew 4 to go to a Roscosmos astronaut, like I saw some people talk about the other day. But nothing's impossible, should we say?
Yeah, and we also had an announcement on the Axiom 2 astronauts actually. So we know the Axiom 1 astronauts, but we also announced fairly recently. We've had plenty of announcements recently of astronauts. Peggy Whitson, who do you want to explain a bit about Peggy?
Yeah, she is one of, if not the most flown astronauts in history. I don't think she has the most time on the ISS. I think that's still held by a Russian cosmonaut in is it a tie with who's the other astronaut who spent like a year in space? I can't remember his name now. I'm gonna kick myself when you say it.
Scott Kelly.
Scott Kelly, that's one. She has the most time in space. She spent a fair amount of time on the ISS, but with the shuttle missions, they were never long duration missions on the ISS because the shuttle used fuel cells to provide its power, so they couldn't have long duration stays for say the half a year we see with current missions. But she has flown a lot of shuttle missions. She's the most flown astronaut in history, and with this Axiom mission, it will probably make it so that she goes down in the history books for a long time of being the most flown astronaut with the most time in space. I think that is safe to say.
Really impressive. And then also there's another crew announcement. John Schaffner, who's an auto racer, will also be flying on that mission. So yeah, that's also
Yeah, these Axiom crews
interesting.
are pretty cool. They've got some like a really diverse crew of like some really experienced people, and then people who are like new to the experience. So it's cool to see. You know, with them being announced, they've got 4 Axiom missions coming up in the coming years. You know, that's just pretty cool to see, and they're all going to probably be about week or so long stays on the ISS, or maybe a little bit less than a week. But yeah, it's going to be cool to see how all that pans out. That's pretty cool if you ask me.
And yeah, it absolutely is. And it's just ushering this new age of commercial space and
Hundred
human
percent.
space flight, which after, there being small attempts in the past and the
Yeah,
occasional
some
um,
flights on
uh,
Soyuz.
commercial astronaut going to space, now it really is this new age of regular commercial human
Yeah,
spaceflight missions to the ISS, to orbit, and well, soon to be suborbital with
yeah.
Blue Origin's
While we are
July
quickly on the
20th flight.
topic of spaceflight tourism, I did want to mention about, I don't know if you've seen this, about Yusaku Maezawa, I think I pronounced that right, who is
Yeah,
flying on a Soyuz sometime soon. So this was quite an interesting topic to me. I mentioned it in one of my videos on the future of the ISS and Axiom Space. Now, Yusaku Maezawa has been a very big contributor to the Starship project, as we're going to mention a bit later on. But also, he's flying on a Soyuz to the ISS as a tourist for about a week, I think. I
yeah.
had thoughts that he would have flown on a Crew Dragon due to just his, relationship with Elon
I
Musk and
guess
the
there just wasn't
company.
space really.
But this is very true. We're in an era of commercial spaceflight where we're getting to the point where there's just not enough flights to accommodate everyone, which I think is incredible. We see the Axiom 1 through 4 missions, which are completely
Yeah,
filled up with astronauts. They haven't announced them yet, but I'm sure they've already
yeah,
got people lined up.
mm,
And then
100%.
there's just not room, for them all, and it's pretty incredible to see. I think he would have flown on a SpaceX Crew Dragon if he had the opportunity. But yeah, I think it's still gonna be an incredible experience. But I thought that was worth mentioning. The ISS, it has 2 docking ports. We're seeing a relocation later this month to accommodate the Boeing OFT-2 mission. So it just speaks for how much spaceflight we're seeing to the ISS, to like especially the US segment, which has gone such a large portion in history of being underused, shall we say, due to there not being enough flights. To now we're in a stage where companies are competing for docking port slots, which I think shows the real change in times.
Yeah, and that's really well put.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool to see. Yeah, right. We've said a lot on the ISS now. We've got one last thing before we take a little short break. We're going to move on to Electron and their return to flight after their unfortunate, shall we say, failure. Yeah, I already put out a video on this, but I think it's worth mentioning it 100%. Electron has had 20 missions now to date. We've seen 2 failures in the missions, the most recent being the 20th mission, which, do you want to mention it a little bit? Saw the 20th mission and exactly what we saw happen.
So, uh, first stage ascent was absolutely fine. We got to stage separation, that was okay. We got to second engine start. It fired for about a second. Then there was a safe shutdown almost instantly,
Yeah,
and unfortunately, the flight had to be terminated due to an anomaly.
yeah,
Um, they've now received authorization from the FAA to resume launches,
mm,
but from a RocketLab statement yesterday, that their review is still ongoing and
yeah,
it's expected to be complete in the coming weeks, according to them.
yeah,
But they did also say, you know, it required a very extremely low probability set of events for this to
yeah.
actually happen. So you could say it was a touch unfortunate. I think it'd be
Yeah,
fair to
I
say,
think
actually.
this was very unlucky. I think although they've been given the green light by the FAA, I think that they might have a little break in flight because they've to be doing their internal reviews on all the data.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I think that was to be expected. It Electron's quite a well-flown vehicle, so I think that this failure was very unlucky, if you ask me. I think a
yeah,
lot went wrong at the wrong time, which shouldn't have gone wrong in a way.
yeah,
There's nothing which has been clearly announced as saying like this is what we think happened. It hasn't been a very clear point. It seems like there was a lot of unpredicted issues which shouldn't happen, which wouldn't usually happen. Something which you just can't predict happened, and it did cause the unfortunate failure. I don't think this is going to be a big problem for Electron, like some people have suggested. I don't think it will cause them to go out of business or anything like that. I think this was unfortunate, and I think Electron's well flown, and they will continue to well, fly
Yeah,
Electron.
100%.
I can't see any reason why they would just go, right, Electron's failed, we won't do that anymore. No, that's not going to happen. They're a company, they're commercial, they're going public.
And
They'll have a little break, assess the problem, and they will fly again. It's that
and
simple.
they have had a few failed missions recently in the last year,
Yeah,
but they're well ahead of all the small sat launches coming onto the market, so they're still in a
absolutely.
pretty good place, I'd say.
Yeah, I think they're leading the industry for the small sat launch at the moment,
Yeah,
in close competition with Virgin Orbit, which are flying, and Astra have started flying. There's been a long delay in there, but RocketLab are by
yeah,
far the most frequent launches and the most successful launches, despite their two failures.
100%.
They're leading the industry, and I think they will continue to for a while, because although we are seeing a lot of competition in the small sat sector, whoever tends to get the bullet first tends to last a bit longer. There's a lot of competition, but at the moment it seems to be a one-horse race at the moment with Electron, which hopefully it'd be nice to see someone else be introduced in the industry, but I think they are very much leading, and they do not have any sign of stopping anytime soon. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, hopefully they'll return to flight soon. We are gonna quickly take a little break. We're gonna see what we're gonna talk about next, and we'll be back for you in a few seconds. Us a few minutes. We'll see you in a minute. Right, so we've had a little break, and now we're going to talk about a thing which most of you have probably been waiting for, which I know is a very big topic at the moment. We're going to talk about Starbase, or formerly known as Boca Chica, or whatever you want to call it now. We're going to say the village is called Boca Chica, but the actual Starship site is going to be called Starbase. I think that's fair to say. So we're going to talk about. We're going to start with
100%.
SM-15. I think SM-15 was the first Starship to land. It feels like ages ago. It was only 3 weeks ago somehow. Feels like a lot longer, but yeah, we saw it originally. It stayed on the landing pad for about a week or so. Then it got lifted back onto one of the test stand B. But we saw it stay there for about a week, and then we saw the Raptor engines removed. Starship SM-15 then was transported back towards the production site, where it got put on one of the display stands. So we originally saw an Elon tweet saying that they might try refly SM-15. We no longer believe that to be the case. We see them maybe progressing with more orbital flights, or maybe SM-16. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But at the moment, what I'm going to say is it's safe to say that I do not believe that SM-15 will fly again. I'm pretty sure that Arthur will agree with me on that. It's on the display stand, so it's just behind the new Starbase sign we've seen, which is pretty cool to see. Yeah, so that's SM-15. I think that's that done. It's very cool to see the first one to land is going to be displayed, just like the first Falcon 9 boosted to land is outside the SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne. Hawthorne? I don't know how to say it now. But yeah, they're going to have a similar thing. Yeah. Hawthorne, yeah. They're going to have a similar thing at Starbase. So now we've talked about what has happened. Should we talk about what's going to happen at Starbase? Do you want to lead us off on this?
As you said, SM-15 is extremely unlikely to fly again, realistically. And then from there, the other options really are 15 flies, which has been in the high bay for what feels like forever, to be honest.
Yeah, it's been in the high bay since before SM-15 flew.
Yeah. Or BN2/BN3, whatever you want to say, or Booster 2, as Elon puts it, and SM-20 go orbital. And at this point, we do not know for sure which of those options.
It's hard to speculate.
So this BN2/3 SM-20 orbital flight is currently no earlier than 30th of June per these FCC filings. And then, like, per NASA space flights documentations they got, it's like net July the 1st or something, so it's almost identical. So yeah, that's the current state. And then per this FCC exhibit, which was released a few weeks ago, the plan is, in terms of the flight plan, there'll be a booster touchdown.
Touchdown in what nature is very hard to know at the moment.
Yeah, so it says touchdown, but what that exactly means is hard to know. Most likely, probably just straight into the ocean. Probably
that was what we
landing,
saw.
but if everything goes okay.
That
But
was what
yeah,
we saw with the first Falcon 9 missions. We saw a few ocean soft landings
yeah,
or soft splashdowns. The language is quite interesting to pay attention to. We know already the ship says ship splashdown after almost an orbit off the coast of Hawaii, but the booster does say touchdown. Whether that it's not going to be on one of the oil rigs which they're developing,
yeah,
Phobos and Demios, something like that, which we know are not going to be constructed yet. We know there's a lot of work going on at the moment, but that one of them's going to be in operation maybe end of the year, and the second one's going to be operation maybe next year. So that's definitely not going to be on one of
yeah,
those. The drone ships, which they currently have, which is just read the instructions. Of course, I still loved you, and the new one in production. It's theoretically possible a Starship could land on one of it, or no, a Super Heavy booster could land on one of them, but they'd have to be quite accurate, should we say, seeing as the Super Heavy booster is about the size of the deck. So that's quite unlikely. I think it's just going to be a splashdown, but who knows? We'll
yeah,
have to wait a little bit longer on that one. But
yeah.
that's kind of the options. Most likely seems a splashdown, but I wouldn't rule anything else out. Yeah, that's my little thing on that. Over.
And then Starship, it said should splash down off the coast of Hawaii. So
Yeah,
overall, it'll complete just less than a full orbit.
yeah.
They're not going to head back to start the landing pad. Because quite
No
frankly, the chance of it surviving is fairly
re-entry.
unlikely, and you don't want to
Yeah.
cause destruction to everything that's already there in
So
Starbase, and it could be dangerous to civilians currently.
So my main question on that was whether we're going to see Starship be launched onto an orbital flight path or a suborbital type trajectory.
Yeah,
My gut feeling would be it would be on an orbital path, but then they would deorbit, so they can test deorbiting from orbit. But it would also make sense for it to be suborbital, so it naturally re-enters in case you have a problem with the ship.
ultimately,
Yeah, it
ultimately the goals of this test, though, whether it's orbital or slightly not quite orbit, so suborbital, is to test Starship re-entry and how Starship fares with that, and obviously
absolutely.
got super heavy
Yeah.
landing, and that's the main goals of it, really.
Yeah, we wouldn't expect these details to come out until closer to the flight anyway. So at the moment, it's best guess, but there's more information coming out daily, and yeah, we're getting closer to a flight. It's still a little way away, I think, but we're still getting there. We're getting there.
Yeah,
I think that leads us quite
probably.
nicely into what's going on at Starbase at the moment in terms of construction. I don't know if you want to give us a little start off on that.
Um, if we just talk a little bit about just the timeline, a bit more of the
Oh
orbital
yeah,
flight,
I completely
because
forgot.
it also
Yeah,
this exhibit gave us a few more details that
yeah,
so main engine cutoff of currently possibly the 29 Raptors on the Super Heavy first stage
yeah.
will be 169 seconds into flight. Stage separation 2 seconds later. Second engine start of well, supposed to be 3 sea level Raptors and 3 vacuum Raptors. It's about 5 seconds later after that. Booster touchdown, 495 seconds following T zero, and second engine cut of 521 seconds into it. Then the Starship will do almost for full orbit
Yeah.
before landing, as mentioned earlier, off the coast of Hawaii, and this is expected to happen around 5,420 seconds
So
after T
just
zero.
shy of an hour and a
And then,
half. So just
yeah,
shy of one full
and then,
orbit.
and then,
Yeah.
as mentioned briefly a second ago, Elon has said in the last few days that there'll be 29 Raptors in the first stage, increasing hopefully to 32 by the end of the year, which obviously is a huge amount.
Yeah.
In a fairly, it's a wide rocket, but 32 in that kind of space is
So yeah,
significant.
how it's going to fit on the booster is we've seen the parts start to appear in at the production site. So at the moment it's a outer ring of 20 Raptors, which is going to be 20 rings all around the outside, basically with no gap in between them. And then kind of we've got a center cluster. So on the outside ring of the center cluster there'll be 8 engines with one central engine being the ninth, so adding up to 29. This is quite similar to Falcon 9, the inner kind of section, which is like what we see with the Octogrid at the moment with the center engine. That's quite similar. Then we've got the 20 engine around the outside. When it comes to a 32 engine launch, we'll see a center cluster of like 3 engines. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the main difference. That's kind of the first like kind of closest to the flight worthy data we've got on it, in the fact that we now know a good number of what engines they're going to use. It was kind of up for debate before, but I think that a 29 is quite a good number to support a first orbital launch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a number which we can trust in the future. It's probably the only time which I've actually heard for there to be prototypes in construction, the engine number fully not decided. I don't think there's been a time in history where they've changed the amount of engines on a
Yeah.
rocket while
It
it's
is
been,
constantly changed.
because
Yeah.
we could see a first flight with 29, but there may be a third flight with 32. I don't think that's. I think that would probably be a first for them to change the amount of engines on a rocket while it's flown. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. It could change again. But I think that might be a first. I'm not sure. Yeah,
And yeah, so and also Elon did mention that they're approaching one Raptor being produced every 48 hours.
which is insanely fast.
Yeah.
Which is very fast. We're not
Um,
sure what's the limiting factor at the moment. Whether it's they're producing one every 48 hours and the testing is the bottleneck. But when you're producing
yeah.
one every 48 hours, you have to put them on the test stand pretty soon, because they want to static fire them, and they're not static fire. They want to fire them before they ship them off to Texas to be integrated or used for whatever their purposes. But I think that production number is very good. If they can keep that going at 48 hours, that's more than enough to support orbital flight. It's just the testing schedule and how quickly they can ship them down to Starbase for these flights, which will probably be the limiting factor.
Yeah. And we also had a question about why scrap BN2.
Yeah,
Um, and okay, it's not it. BN2 and BN3 parts are basically kind of combined to form Booster 2. So that
yeah.
kind of um,
So
answers your question
the
simply, because it is fairly complicated, but that's the rough overview of it.
the logic is that basically the two have been combined to form the second booster, so booster number two.
Yeah,
Um, so we saw reports saying that BM3 and SN20 would be the first orbital flight. I think it's safe to say that it would have been BM3, but I think it's now going to be booster two, which performs that flight. It is parts from BM3, but because it will be when it's assembled, it will be the second fully assembled booster, meaning it will be booster number two,
yeah,
essentially. That's the best way to say it. I think BM3 will just be the next one. Yeah, they've just moved up the hardware a little bit, I think would be safe to say. So
yeah. And there's also the BN 2.1 test tank,
yeah,
which is kind of been put on a test stand, and we can expect some sort of pressure tests once it gets out to the launch site, hopefully fairly soon, to test this structural integrity um, of this tank, and then
yeah.
obviously will be helpful for Booster 2,
Yeah, we want
looking
to see
forward
something start going on
for
at
an orbital flight.
the site in terms of
Mm,
pressure tests or something, because it's been a while since
yeah,
SN15 got taken back. They've actually
yeah,
seen any sort of flight operational preparations, which is quite interesting. But on contrary, we've seen a lot of orbital tank farm and orbital site
yeah,
production, which is pointing towards an orbital launch very nicely. Do you want to start off with that? So first thing I think
yeah,
we'll mention the orbital tower first, which is going to be a massive
yeah.
structure.
So the orbital launch tower is expected to be the biggest structure in the local area, around, South Padre Island, Boca Chica, and everywhere. Um, Currently, there are three tower sections that have
Yeah,
been stacked together, and there's expected to be around 4 to 5 more.
yeah.
It's not absolutely certain how many more.
No.
Currently, two are being produced back at the production site. One's nearly finished, and one's just started to produce.
Yeah.
But progress there is being made, and hopefully we'll have another one stacked fairly
Yeah.
soon.
Um.
And then, in terms of,
Yeah. Sorry. I was going to mention very quickly that last night, I don't know if it still stands. I haven't had a chance to check yet. That we saw a road closure scheduled for today. Now I don't know if it still stands, but that road
yeah,
closure could be for absolutely anything. You've got SN16. You've got some.
um,
Not. I don't think it's going to be that. I think it's going to be one of the tanks for the orbital launch farm or something like that. It could be so many things now
yeah.
that it's
So
hard to tell. Um.
the
Yeah.
options are most likely GSC3,
Yeah.
another orbital launch tower section,
Yeah.
and then something like that is probably most
Yeah,
likely at this point.
there's a lot going on at that
But it's
orbital
hard to know for
site that it's
sure.
hard to tell.
Yeah,
So much going on.
yeah,
That orbital tower is starting to grow very fast, shall we say, with a rapid rate.
yeah. It certainly is.
And then the GSE tanks are increasing at about the same rate. We've got a lot of them. Two of them have been constructed. I think GSE 3 is at the build site, ready to go.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong on these. GSE 4 is in the mid bay, completed construction, I'm pretty sure. And GSE 5, we have had some parts spotted for it, or some tank sections. I think that was
I
correct.
know it's forward though has definitely been spotted.
Right. Okay. And then, so they're already, two of them at least are ready to go. I know that GSE 3's been ready for quite a while to go now. GSE 4 might take a little while for some in the mid bay, but yeah, a lot going on there. And I don't know if you want to talk about the cryo shells, which you've seen being produced quickly.
Yeah. So, there's been one cryo shell which basically goes over the top of this GSE tank.
Yeah.
And I think liquid nitrogen is stored between it, but between the main tank and the cryo shell.
Almost. So
One
actually,
has been transported to the launch site.
so I want to quickly just point out how they actually work. So I think from what I've heard, obviously nothing's been confirmed yet. I think that how it works is between the tanks, the GSE tanks, which you see at the moment, and the cryo shells, they hold a vacuum in there, which is how they insulate the tanks. I could be wrong. That's just speculation at the moment, but that seems likely that that's how they will insulate the tanks. Yeah, carry on.
And then to cryo shell 1 is at the launch site.
Yeah,
Cryo shell 2 is currently being produced,
yeah.
and it's at the old gas well site.
Mm,
And then, so that's kind of where we go in terms of the ground supportment equipment.
yeah,
And also important to note that the Franklin crane, one of SpaceX's big cranes, is also waiting for another extension. And it's
yeah.
already huge, but it's going to get even larger now.
Yeah, that's the crane which has been mostly supporting the orbital launch tower construction so far. So that is a very big sign of them adding more sections quite soon to it. Which is very cool.
Yeah.
In summary, we've seen a lot going on at that orbital site, a lot of fast progress, a lot's going on, a lot of flight hardware and a lot of orbital flight hardware in terms of GSE tanks, launch tower, orbital launch mount, which has its launch table being built at the moment. A lot's going on over there, and I think there's still a lot more to come, which is coming towards that orbital flight attempt, which could be as soon as June 30th or July 1st, which is not that far away.
No.
But yeah, on that note, I think we're going to move on to our last topic of today, which is launching in about 6 hours, should we say, or 5 hours, which is the CRS-22 mission.
Around 4.
Yeah, I've put out a video on the CRS-22 mission, and more specifically its solar arrays which are on board, but I think you might know a little bit more about what's on board the actual Dragon capsule. Some of the science missions on there.
So there's firstly in Dragon's trunk, as you mentioned, there's 2 new solar arrays for ISS. This should increase the power once they're all taken to the ISS and assembled. It should increase the power on the ISS by around 20 to 30%, so significant increase.
It will restore it to the power capabilities it was able to produce when the ISS was first constructed and first became operational, which is very cool.
And then this mission will also deploy 10 ELANR, I don't know exactly how you meant to pronounce it, 36 CubeSats. And there are also some pretty cool animals that we've taken on board today. It's like called water bears, and they will help us gain this better understanding of the stress factors affecting humans in space. There's also this portable ultrasound device called Butterfly IQ Ultrasound. There's bobtail squids, funny name, which will attempt to understand more about microgravity and the effect on animal microbe like interactions, things like that. And there's also a 3D kidney cell model, and it's going to be used to study the formation of microcrystals that can lead to kidney stones. And this is one of these great technologies we test in space that can help life back on Earth. And I feel like that's especially significant a lot of the time because there's always people asking, oh, it's just a waste of money. It's just a vanity project, whatever. But this is a real world example of how this mission's going to help life back on Earth.
Yeah.
Um, and then finally, there won't only be animals going there, but there'll also be cotton plants, and they will study the influence of the root system on plant functions and what's crucial for the survival of them.
There's a lot of
So
new science flying on that mission.
yeah,
A lot.
there's lots and lots of cool stuff. Um, and then so it's launching today at 1:29 p.m.
Yeah.
Eastern time,
Yeah.
and that's actually 9 p.m. Universal time.
Yeah.
And be launching from Launch Complex 39A,
Yeah.
booster 1067, its first flight, so nice shiny booster. It's actually quite weird seeing that, if I'm honest.
Yeah, it's been a little while since we've seen a brand new booster
Yeah,
out of production. I think it's also worth mentioning the weather for today is 60% favourable. I
yeah,
might try and get this video out tonight, but if there is a backup opportunity tomorrow, I think it's about half an hour earlier. Do not quote me on that. But yeah, we've seen Falcon 9 launching worse chances of launch, but we should see how it goes. Yeah, tonight's launch is probable, but maybe we'll see what the weather is like tomorrow.
yeah.
We'll have to wait
There's
and
a
see
few
on that.
concerns with a few concerns with cumulus cloud flight through precipitation.
Yeah,
But yeah, the first stage should hopefully see its first landing on the Costa Still Lovely drone ship. Um, Interestingly, there's been no static fire out at the Cape on the Space Coast,
yeah,
because they decided it was enough to do a full duration static fire at McGregor, which is where they tested out the first stage.
yeah.
Um, and then the Cargo Dragon spacecraft that's going to the ISS will dock in 2 days' time
2 days
on
time.
June the 5th at 5 a.m. Eastern Time or 9 a.m. Universal Time.
Yeah. Well, that's a lot going on, should we say? Yeah, a lot to look forward to. In a couple of days, we should see a docking of CRS-22. Today, it is Thursday today, we should see maybe some more movement at Starbase in Texas. We've had some announcements of the Axiom crew, announcements of commercial crew, and last night probably one of the biggest announcements of the year was NASA's Venus missions. And yeah, I think we've had so much to talk about today, and I have a feeling we're going to have even more to talk about next
Yeah,
time.
and there'll be as ever. There's always tons and tons. Wow, isn't there?
Yeah, there's tons and tons to talk about at the moment, and I think that we have just about covered everything for today. We got there eventually.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that is going to be the end for today. Thank you for coming on once again. I look forward to the next episode, which we aim for about 2 or 3 weeks,
very
depending
much
on
looking
it.
forward to it. Yeah,
Yeah, we'll see when we do. Obviously, both of us have a lot going on at the moment, so we try and find the time to do it. But 2 or 3 weeks is the goal, or probably more likely 2, hopefully. There we go.
yeah. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, we look forward to recording the next one. Till then,
We'll see you all soon.
yeah, for more information on the CRS-22 mission, have a look at my video I posted on it. I also talked about the future of the ISS and the Axiom missions. And if you wanted to know anything more about the RocketLab failure, I also have a video on that. Yeah, feel free to check them out. Go and give SpaceX 360 a follow on Twitter. He posts all the latest news. And yeah, if you like this, consider subscribing, and hopefully you'll see the next one in a few weeks. Thanks for coming on, and I think that's going to be it, and we'll see you later.